traditional brokerage is not designed to serve into a top producing agent, a high volume agent. It's designed to serve into an average agent. Nobody had ever had the audacity or gumption to go to the Department of Real Estate and investigate, explore, examine whether or not it was possible to be an invisible brokerage.
You built now a $24 billion invisible brokerage.
A traditional brokerage would rather have 1,000 agents that close one deal a year each at 50% splits than to have 100 agents that close 10 deals a year each at 20% splits. The thing that constrains good agents is not a lack of opportunity, it's a lack of capacity. And it wasn't that it was particularly important to me to build what we've built. What was important to me was to serve agents in the way that site does. Someone like David Cohen, he has no intention of selling the company, but he has the option to, and that's the key. Before Side, that was not possible for a real estate agent. A lawyer can do that, a plumber can do that, an electrician can do that, a dentist can do that, but not for a real estate agent.
You built now a $24 billion invisible brokerage. Why was building an invisible brokerage important to you?
I like to round up. It's like 24 point something. So we say 25. It'll be a bit more, of course, for this year. It grows every year, which is wonderful. And it's grown from zero over the last 8.5 years now. And it wasn't that it was particularly important to me to build what we've built. What was important to me was to serve agents and real estate teams and independent brokerages in the way that site does. And it was because I came to a recognition and to an insight that when you look across the real estate industry, there is a segment of real estate professional that's unlike the others. And those are the entrepreneurial class, folks that in effect already run their own business, which is what you do as a top producing agent and team. You run your own business, but did not actually own their own business. And even though they were making a good living, a great living, serving their communities really well, serving the agents that they were mentoring and coaching up and working with very well. All of that translated into great income, but it didn't actually translate into equity and into asset value. Because all of the equity gains when you are working as part of the status quo traditional brokerage model flow to the top, to ownership. They don't flow from the value creators, the agents, back to the agents. They flow from the value creators to the folks that manage the company, own the company, as opposed to actually go out there every day and carry the cost, the risk of connecting invisible dots, originating business, serving into the community, taking care of clients, and doing everything you need to do in order to make that something that is possible and is delightful for yourself and everybody that you're there to work on behalf of. And so my insight and the insight of the people that we started the company with, Side with, was that those agents that are top producers that already go out and market and make their own logo that they put on the sign next to the traditional brokerage one were very much underserved, because traditional brokerage is not designed to serve into a top producing agent, a high volume agent. It's designed to serve into an average agent. An average agent is closing 2, maybe 3 transactions a year. And of course, that is a much different, they have a much different set of needs than an agent that's closing 30, 40, 50, 500 transactions a year with a team and a staff and a process and a system. It's incredibly different. So that's where Side came from. It was a reaction to what was happening in the industry and what was not being served by the industry, and everything else followed that particular insight, that particular motivation. It wasn't a top-down, well, let's figure out how to create one of the largest real estate companies in the country. It was, let's actually figure out how to solve problems for this segment of agent, for the entrepreneurial class, and help transform them from great agents, great teams into their own great companies in a way where they have all the upside of ownership without having to take on the downside of actually operating a brokerage.
Yeah.
Because it's a different business, right? What an agent does every day is service. It's sales, it's hospitality. It's not administrative or legal or infrastructure or payments, which is the domain of brokerage.
Yeah, and I want to get into like the growth of Side and then the future of brokerages in a minute, but you did something kind of unique, and I'm curious, like, first, what prompted you to do interviews before you even started the brokerage, and then like what insights did you get from like spending that time to do the interviews and gain those insights?
Most entrepreneurs, particularly in the world of technology, and we're here in the San Francisco Bay Area, so this is, of course, is a hotbed of
tech and
tech and the formation of new companies that are addressing problems in interesting and innovative ways. But most entrepreneurs make the mistake of thinking about what a particular solution could look like without thinking deeply about what problem they're actually addressing. And because of that, they rush to develop a product before they develop a customer. And before they develop insight about who they actually are here to serve and what they're looking to solve in the first place.
Yep.
So the advice that my experience was such that, looking back now, the advice I give entrepreneurs in any space, in any category, doing any particular thing, is turn your attention to really understanding the problem that you're solving and for whom.
Yeah.
And before you ever write a line of code or think about what it is that your solution is going to be or how much you're going to charge for it, or what the name of the company should be, or what approach you should take, is get out of the building and get in front of the people that you are going to be serving and have a whole lot of conversations with them to validate or invalidate the assumptions that you've made, because you have made assumptions.
Yeah.
And you always make assumptions. And to put your head down and build on a set of assumptions that you have not at all validated is an incredibly risky proposition. And if we had done that when we began Side would not be the company that it is today, because it had to be in the context of a whole lot of different conversations with a whole lot of different agents that we were able to understand what was really needed, what was actually missing, to inform the insight that we had, to then say, here's how it is we should go about addressing it, solving for it.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's interesting because a lot of times when you bring a service or product to a market, you're bringing it with assumptions, but then once you actually put it in the market, you start to learn from all of those assumptions.
Exactly right.
So what did you learn in those early years that like kind of changed the trajectory of where Side was going to go?
So that's an interesting question. And you're right in saying that you only really are able to gain insight once you're in market, but you don't have to be in market with the product. You can be in market with the concept.
Yeah.
You can figure it out on paper before you ever figure it out with code or with hardware or with whatever service offering it is that you've imagined in your mind. So for example, when Side first began as a company, we were speaking with an agent named Michael Ramos, who was my co-founder Ed's neighbor in San Jose on Santana Row. And Ed and I, at that time, looked at the real estate industry and the relationship that brokerages had with agents and thought to ourselves, wow, they sure are paying a whole lot for not a whole lot in return. Mm-hmm. So maybe we should just make things cheaper, which is such a basic, rudimentary understanding of any particular thing, especially real estate. And it's why you see so many real estate startups go down the path of let's make things cheaper.
Yeah.
Because it's an obvious insight.
And it's a race to the bottom.
At that point, certainly it does become that, but that shouldn't be the reason why you don't do a particular thing. The reason we didn't attach ourselves to that initial insight was because we had the benefit of speaking to Michael Ramos, and I remember vividly, and this is now 9 years ago, him saying, it's not that, like, I would rather you actually solve my problems than make the status quo costless. I'm happy to pay more if I no longer have to be responsible in the way that I currently am for conveying transactions in the way that I currently do, because I'm spending half of my time doing administrative work that, from my point of view, should be the purview of brokerage, but brokerages don't actually provide that service. They've largely outsourced that to agents to a point where we now have to work with transaction coordinators. Mm-hmm. We've had to build our own set of systems around how to keep our transactions organized, because I'm an agent doing 40 transactions a year. That becomes incredibly overwhelming at that kind of a volume. If I was doing 3 or 4 transactions, not at all, it would be fine. But I need help bringing organization, clarity, programmatic, systematic approach to how I actually originate all the transactions that I'm serving, how I keep all those organized, how I streamline them, smooth them out, and then I'm able to reconcile all the different payments, connect all those dots, because that is my responsibility today, and it is the reason why I have no more capacity to serve more clients than I'm currently serving. And from that feedback, right, from that came this insight that till this day drives so much of what it is that we do and how it is that we do things, because it became clear that the thing that constrains good agents is not a lack of opportunity. It's a lack of capacity.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, when all is said and done, as an agent, you're not selling houses. That's not the business that you're in. You're selling time. You're delivering a service.
Yeah.
And to the degree that you're spending time doing things that aren't that, is the degree to which you limit your capacity for meeting more opportunity.
But it's kind of interesting because it's kind of flipped. A lot of people want like more business, more leads, but what's really stopping them is they don't have the capacity to fulfill sometimes those leads.
Almost without fail, each and every time when I see an agent investing in more lead volume, where that breaks down is that they just don't have enough time to get around to doing anything with those leads in the first place. Maybe they can put in that initial call or write that email, but the capacity for persisting at those opportunities and connecting with them in genuine ways that are relational as opposed to transactional is non-existent whatsoever, because they're capacity constrained. So that was an amazing insight that we only could have gleaned and gained by speaking with people who do the work and understand what the experience is like. And then, of course, you get that feedback from one particular person. And the really important thing following that is to triangulate that, reference it. And then you go and you speak to someone like a Michelle Kim or a Kelly Griggs or a Kevin Gueco, folks who day zero were willing to share time with Side, like a Val Vandervoort, and give us insight and feedback about things that we were learning and thinking, and you validate. You say, oh, okay, this does seem to be consistent. It does seem to be true. I actually recall taking a look at Michelle Kim's P&L, and I say P&L because it wasn't much of one back then, right? And seeing that she had a line item there for revenue, that income that she was getting from referring business out to other agents. And when we sort of asked about what that was and what that meant, we learned that she just came to a point where she just had no more time to take on one more client, one more listing, one more buyer, because she was so busy with everything else that was going on that she was referring that out to other agents at 25%.
25%.
And that became an obvious opportunity to help her do better from a revenue perspective, because the question, of course, became how might we make it such that Michelle can serve this in the amazing, magical way that she does this work for others, so that she can get 100% of the revenue as opposed to just a quarter of it. And 12 months later, $24 million in volume was $36 million in closings for almost no other reason than just addressing that particular constraint.
And I'm actually curious about that because Kelly told me like one of the interesting things of like looking at her P&L, and you were like, you're spending several $1,000s in software, and you're just like, why don't we just basically cover that? And tech is like one of the hardest, if not hardest things to build, and it's a risk to build it if it doesn't work. A lot of brokerages try to go down the tech path, but then there's a lot of agents who, like, I shouldn't say it, there's some agents who leave Side but want the tech because it's like so useful. Like, how did you get into like, at first I'm curious, like how do you get to the place of what made you think, let me look at a P&L and find a problem there and then see how to solve it first?
Well, you want to look at everything. Developing a new product, a new service, a new company is anthropology before it is anything. Right? You need to become a historian of the space, and bringing an outside perspective to it can really help with that, because if you're of the industry, then oftentimes you're institutionalized by that industry, and it's really hard to see around the corners or above the waterline that is the ecosystem that you've spent a decade plus in being indoctrinated or trained or made to believe a whole bunch of things that from your point of view now are dogma or religion, are unquestionable. But somebody that brings an outside point of view can look at those things and turn them over and look at them a bunch of different ways and ask a whole lot of questions, because that person does not treat any of those things as if they're sacred. They treat it all as if nothing's sacred. Right? Nobody, when we started the company, everybody thought what we were doing was illegal, because nobody had ever had the audacity or gumption to go to the Department of Real Estate and investigate, explore, examine whether or not it was possible to be an invisible brokerage and come to market, not as one monolith brand, but as a boutique brand in El Dorado Hills, in El Dorado County, that it was the exact manifestation of one individual agent's values, standards, ambitions, and aspirations, and just work in the background silently in support of that, and then go off and do that for others as well. It just was heresy. It was not something that was open for discussion for someone that was an insider to the industry, coming from outside of the industry and bringing a different point of view and basing that point of view on nothing other than what you were seeing and the behavior that people were demonstrating and the insight that you were gaining from those observations in reference to the interests that were exclusive to that particular person, which in our case was a top producing agent.
Yeah.
It just had not been done, and is rarely done in a way that is born of the actual industry, which is why brokerages struggle to build their own technology solutions.
Technology, yeah.
Because they're solving for their own problems. That's all they know. They don't really understand the problems of agents. And if they are solving the problems of agents, they're solving the problems for the average agent. And the average agent is an agent that's not producing a whole lot. And that actually is what the brokerages want. They want that more than anything because, all things being equal, a traditional brokerage would rather have 1,000 agents that close one deal a year each at 50% splits than to have 100 agents that close 10 deals a year each at 20% splits.
Yeah.
It's the same amount of overall transaction volume, but as a brokerage, you're making a whole lot more money if
volume.
Transaction volume is distributed and spread out across a whole lot of less experienced hands than if it's concentrated in more experienced ones.
Yeah.
So the industry itself had no particular incentive to think about these things, and still does not. Yeah.
And I was curious, like, when you look at the tech that you built and why it gets adopted, why it gets used, why it's wanted, like, what comes to mind to you on, like, what it solves for the agent and, like, what did you learn throughout building it?
Whenever you're building product in a technology, a tech product in particular, the most important thing is to understand and address the frequency case. So what does that, when I say frequency case, what does that imply to you? What does that make you think?
It means that, like, how often does something actually get used or get done? And yeah, I remember you saying something about frequency in the tech that you built.
What is it that person is doing really often with a lot of frequency that is frustrating them? And that is not something that they really should be doing, or it is not something that is their gift or their interest or their preference, and is independent of what they actually do really great and want to do more of.
Yep.
What is that thing? Right? Like figuring that out, understanding that, honing in on it is the magical insight that every entrepreneur should seek. Always. Because if you're solving for a frequency case, like if you're solving in the way that some prop tech companies have attempted to solve for a home buyer's needs, well, a person's buying a home every 10 to 14 years nowadays on average. That's a pretty infrequent case.
Yep.
And so it's really hard to build an enduring business that way. And you can think about a whole lot of these prototype brokerages that are trying to disintermediate agents and go direct to the buyer, direct to the seller. They've never worked as sustainable, enduring businesses. And I would argue, I would put forward that the reason that's the case is because there's no frequency in that behavior. A person does that once and then they don't do it again for a very, very long time. But a good agent is in transaction every day.
Yep.
They're in transaction every hour. And they are coordinating and conveying the transaction from contract through to close constantly throughout the day, throughout the week, throughout the month, throughout their life, to a point where it becomes a burden, something that soaks up so much of their energy and so much of their time and takes away from their ability to be in community and to be in relationship with their actual client. So that is what makes what Sites created so special, is that we addressed what agents were doing with a great deal of frequency that they didn't prefer to do, that did not move the needle on the experience of their client, that did not create more capacity or ability or opportunity for them to meet more opportunity and be in relationship and in transaction and in service to other clients. And for the last 8.5, 9 now years, that's all we've been focused on, is how can we continue to smooth out that experience for agents, both the individual and team level, such that the balance of their time, the lion's share of their time, the majority of their time, and all of their energy can be turned to and focused on what matters most, which is not the logistics, it's not the administrative, it's not the systems, it's not the operations, it's the service.
And what's really interesting when you look at like any business is that, one, I've heard you kind of say that, where you looked at a problem, a lot of prop tech want to deal with like a 10-year problem. You want to deal with something that is done hundreds of times within a year, not like something that happens every 10 years.
Right.
And that's the origin of some of the insights. And what was something interesting to me is what you said is that when it comes to like a business, like for example, you de-risking like the agent and the team leader by bringing in the admin, the legal, all of that support in-house, kind of shifts the risk to you, because now you have the overhead of the people. And there's kind of a few ways you can solve that risk. You can have people, you can have tech, and when you, for example, have a higher employee per revenue headcount, especially you see it in tech, like they have 300, 500, like 3 million revenue per employee. Like you can have better quality employees, you can do other tech, other things. Like, I'm curious, how do you think through a problem in solving it with tech versus solving it with people, and then when to kind of dig into different areas like that?
Problems can be solved in a lot of different ways. And when, like I said before, when you're solving for frequency, you've got to solve that with technology. Because if you're solving that with people, you haven't solved anything. You've solved nothing. Because the frequency is still there, and it's still a burden of time and energy to a person who otherwise could be applying their amazing imagination and ability and then, the magic to doing things that technology can never do, which is be in a relationship with other people, trade in sentiment, serve, show up, be there in person, understand nuances, connect invisible dots, those types of things. So when you look at Site's product, that addresses the transaction facilitation frequency case. But our business model addresses an entirely different problem and does so without any technology at all whatsoever.
Yeah.
Right? There's the product innovation and there's the business model innovation.
Business model innovation.
Right.
Yeah.
So, the insight around transaction, of course, is that, as I mentioned before, is a great agent is constrained by capacity more than by opportunity. They sell time, not houses. So then you ask yourself, as every great product person or inventor does, how might we, right? How might we solve for that? How might we unconstrain them? How can we open up their capacity? How can we help them shift energy and time from this place where they don't want to have their time and energy to this place where they do? But the other insight that we gained very early on in the life of the company was that if you're a top producing agent, if you're a productive team, you effectively are already running a business.
Yep.
You're operating a business. You just don't happen to own it. Because in the traditional relationship that you have with the traditional brokerage, they own it. They own you. They own the brand. They're the ones that benefit from all of the equity gains. It's not the individual agents. The individual agents that contribute all that value and all those equity gains are there to be traded, as opposed to actually be a party to all of the value that's being created by them. And you ask yourself, why is that? Right? Why is it that nearly a decade ago we started to see all sorts of agents start to create their own logos, their own team names, and fight with their brokerages about how much of the sign their logo could take versus the brokerage's brand could take, and get into those conflicts and invite them and insist that they're going to put their name on there and they're going to make it bigger than what the brokerage would otherwise prefer and bigger than the brokerage's brand was before and will ever be again. That's demonstrated behavior. That's people actually maybe not explicitly recognizing, but implicitly at the very least recognizing that they're the value creators and that they're running a business, and that the thing that's going to serve them best is if they are able to differentiate from the other 1,000 agents sharing the exact same brand and the exact same designs and approaching listings with the exact same presentation formats as hundreds of other people in the exact same market. That was what was being demonstrated. And so you look at that and you say, why is it that they're just not taking the next step, the next natural step forward, which is taking ownership of the business itself and not compromising at all whatsoever, and not having to be in conflict and in misalignment with the brokerage they're affiliated with, and not having to have those conversations with the broker about whose logo gets to be bigger or smaller. Why subject yourself to any of that at all? And you come to realize that the reason that they're not taking that next natural step is that there's a barrier to doing so. Yep. And that barrier is you have to start a brokerage. And you have to operate a brokerage. And starting and operating a brokerage is an entirely different business than running a real estate agency, a real estate services company. One is a hospitality business and the other is an infrastructure one. Right? It's legal compliance, administrative, payments, auditing, support, systems. It's entirely removed from what agents actually do incredibly well. It just so happens that what agents do incredibly well is a much more important component of the value chain, because without that, then there is no value to be had, because there's no buyer, seller, or renter to be served. Yeah. Right? And there's none, and there's no client that is being served. It's not to say that what brokerages do in the value chain isn't critical or even important or even hard. It's just to say that it's not as valuable. So if you're an agent who's already constrained by time, you don't want more of that time being dedicated to more administrative, right? And that's what you necessarily have to dedicate more of your time to if you want to take ownership of that business. Yeah. And I saw that as something that was litigated and regulated into reality by the legacy brokerages who had spent 100 years making it really, really difficult for good agents to be able to do exactly that, which is take ownership of their actual company and become owners of it. And that just did not resonate or align or make sense to us. So the question again became, how might we? Right? How might we make it possible for people to be an owner, become an owner of the company that they already are running, without them having to take on the burden of operating a brokerage? How can we give them that upside without them having to suffer all of that downside, which was engineered into existence in this artificial way to keep them from being able to actually express their aspiration, their ambition, and take the natural next step? And that's the innovation of the model. The innovation of the model is you become invisible. You commoditize brokerage. You make the back office something that you deliver as a service. So that anybody can start their own company in a brand new way, independent of having to start their own and operate their own back office, their own brokerage back office. And that is the reason why over the last 8 or so years now, we've been able to help proliferate so many new owners. There are, nearly 1,000 new boutique brokerages that exist today that would otherwise not exist if it weren't for that business model innovation that Side brought to market. And that was entirely based on the insight we gained by spending time observing, speaking with, and seeing how great agents were actually, what they were actually doing, as opposed to just necessarily believing or saying.
Yeah, and it's interesting that, because you talk a lot about like ownership, equity, brand, like value chain, next level, and it kind of gets me thinking of like everyone spends all this time to build a business, and eventually you might want some financial outcome of that business at some point. But for agents, it's hard because there's like key man risk. There's not a lot of the same systems. So like whether it's a merger, acquisition, like that's hard to do.
In the status quo, it's impossible. It's not set up for the equity gains to be captured by the agents. It's set up for the equity gains to sit with the brokerage. That's where the equity gains are. You look at some of the public real estate companies today, some of the newly public real estate companies today, the more recent ones, where agents have literally invested their own money in having shares in those companies. Those agents have yet to actually see gains from those investments, but ownership of those companies have all seen gains. All those CEOs have taken tens of millions of dollars off the table, and they've done that trading stock to agents for money. So it's right there, right? Like equity gains flow to the top, and so that's why Side sits at the bottom. Right? And like we sit at we're a platform. Right? We're a platform, so the equity gains of a company that an agent actually owns only flow to that agent. And even if they have no intention of selling that company, that business, anytime soon, like David Cohen, who you met with recently here in San Francisco, with City Real Estate, which is now the third largest office in San Francisco, not the third largest team, it's the third largest office. Right? It'll close nearly $1 billion, if not more, this year in San Francisco, after 7+ years in existence, with about 50 amazing agents that work collaboratively and cooperatively as a boutique, as specialists, to serve buyers, sellers, renters in the city in a way that nobody else can, because they're approaching it in a very focused way, as opposed to a one-size-fits-all kind of way. Right? He has no intention of selling the company, but he has the option to.
He has the option.
And that's the key. The key is to have
optionality.
The optionality.
Yeah.
To have the options. Right? Because it also, because those options do present themselves. Not that this is necessarily a good or best or recommended practice, but if you're an agent today running a team, good luck getting a bank to lend you money. Because all they see when they see you as an independent contractor, they don't actually see a business. But somebody who works with Side, in partnership with Side, who has created a company with Side, where they're, of course, leading the way on service, and where they're in the background handling everything back office, They can go to their bank today and borrow against the asset. Right? They can take a line of credit.
Which every normal business does.
Which every normal business can and should be able to do. Which is maybe one of the most important components of what's driven American excellence. And
is to have access to capital.
Access to capital, exactly right. The ability to take some risk. That is only in real estate is that not available. A lawyer can do that, a plumber can do that, an electrician can do that, a dentist can do that. But before side, that was not possible for a real estate agent.
And I'm actually curious on the David point, because you don't see mergers happen a lot because the whole risk of it all. And so like, what makes it easier to have that type of like growth strategy in place for boutique brokerages, teams? Like, what does like side do that makes it easier?
Well, if you are running a team, if you're running like the Andrew real estate team, an agent in your market who is as excellent as you are, a peer who is also closing a whole lot of volume and serving a whole lot of clients, is never going to become part of the Andrew team because they are their own team already. So that framework, that format is incredibly limiting. But if you as Andrew were to start your own company and it was called A Plus Real Estate, that other agent who you have a relationship with, who you really enjoy collaborating with, cooperating with, already doing deals with, spending time with, sharing best practices with, the opportunity for them to bring their team into A Plus Real Estate is much more real, tangible, and profound than the opportunity for them to ever fold that into the Andrew Real Estate Group, which would never happen.
No.
You look at a company like City Real Estate today, and this is true for so many of Side's partner companies. City is an amazing example of that here in San Francisco, where we're currently are. But there are other companies we have here in the city that are very much positioned in that way and do very similar things, like Michelle's Mosaic or Paul's Barb & Co. and Mary's Vantage, where I could sit here for half an hour and just
list names.
Yeah. But someone like Alexander Laurie, who is a legendary real estate agent in San Francisco, a top 10 real estate team in San Francisco, closing $100 million plus a year perennially for nearly a decade. The idea that they would fold the Laurie group into the David Cohen team is preposterous, but the idea that they could become a collaborator of, a peer of, a partner to David Cohen team at City Real Estate and be the Laurie group at City Real Estate is obvious.
So I used to think growing on YouTube was hard until I learned the game of YouTube. Now we manage over 30 of the top real estate channels from 0 to 50,000 subscribers, and they each generate over $250,000 in extra GCI every single year. And here's the one thing that I learned. YouTube is not a video quality game, it's a packaging game, meaning it's all about the topics and how you package them. That's why we send the top 10 highest performing outlier videos every single week in our newsletter. We track over 150 of the top real estate channels across the country and way more outside the industry to give you the 10 highest performing outlier videos every single week to inspire your next video. So if you want 10 free ideas every single week sent to your inbox, click the link in the description below and join the Breaking and Building Leaders newsletter and join over 7,000 agents who get the 10 best outlier videos sent directly to their inbox every single week to inspire their next video. Join the newsletter today. It's completely for free.
So I'm curious because in sales, like there's always ego and being like number one, and also like just wanting to
ego
own.
in sales, I don't know.
I'm not saying it's all the time. but
I'm kidding.
everyone wants to own like 100% of the pie. Sometimes I shouldn't say everyone. That's
Sometimes people want to.
they
yeah,
want
sure.
to, but when you look at the big businesses, it's uncommon. Like the biggest businesses, you don't own 100% of the pie a lot because it makes sense to have multiple founders, multiple partners. And I'm curious, for example, in agents, when does it make sense to be like, oh, we can grow by 1 or we can grow by 10, 15, 30 through like merger and acquisition?
Look, I think that generally speaking, it is, and there's some exceptions to this because maybe you're an artisan, maybe you're an artist, and in cases like that, being singular is valuable, but it certainly limits your capacity and your opportunity. But that's something that is perfectly okay if that's what the preference of that individual is.
Yep.
Right? And great, there are some agents that will produce $100 million a year in sales doing 10 transactions at an average price point of 10 million. And that doesn't particularly require a lot of capacity because it's one a month.
Yep.
It doesn't require for you to have a particular level of support or collaborators or stakeholders because of the frequency of it is not as high.
Back to the frequency.
Yeah, it's back to that frequency, right? It's like you could be Hermes and only make 1,000 Birkins a year and then charge $60,000. Well, that's in resale, but charge a whole lot more for a whole lot less per item, then become Louis Vuitton, where you're mass manufacturing your leather goods and driving the price down to make them more accessible for more people. Both of those approaches are viable, and there's magic and beauty and greatness in both of those ways. So I always say success comes in many different sizes. It comes in many different shapes. It comes in lots of different scales. The thing too that's important is to know thyself and know what you want and what makes sense for you. We have partners that are individual producers, and that's the value proposition of their brand. Is I'm an artist and I do this in a very particular kind of way, and I don't do too much of it. So when I do it, I'm doing it at a commission that's typically much higher than market. And okay, right? That is an amazing approach to something. It's a choice that you make, and it should be connected to what you want and your preferences. So that's what I would say to that. And maybe I've lost track of the original question. Do you want to reference me back or take me back to?
Yeah, so like when it comes to thinking through growth as like a high performing agent team doing 50, 100, 300 deals a year, like when does growth, because growth can come in many different ways, and like mergers and acquisitions is just one form of growth.
Okay, right. So that's what we were. So you asked about mergers and acquisitions.
Yeah.
And Site has never merged or acquired anything, and we've grown significantly.
Yeah.
There are brokerages out there that, for them, mergers and acquisitions is the only way they've ever known growth, and that, interestingly enough, even though it's allowed them to get to a particular scale, they get to a point where, because that's the only way they've ever known growth, their opportunity for growing beyond where they ultimately find themselves at a mature state disappears, because there are only so many opportunities to acquire things and merge things, and those are typically inorganic initiatives. They're not natural. They're not bottoms up. They're tops down. They're houses made of hay. They're not homes built out of brick. And I'm a big believer that if you want to create something that's enduring, you have to make it out of brick. And making things out of brick is hard. It's heavy.
Innovation.
It's heavy. It's just a heavier lift. It takes longer, but it's a lot more enduring. It's a lot more durable. So my advice to agents and people who site partners with is, and just generally is, don't mortgage the future for gains in the present. And oftentimes mergers, acquisitions, that's exactly what that is. There are some opportunities to do those things like that, but if that becomes the only way, the principal way, if that's all you know, then you don't really know the nature. You don't really understand the nature of the market in which you are building. You don't really understand the nature of the business which you have built.
So what do you think, or what do you see a lot of the times the teams, the boutique brokerages get wrong when it comes to growth and like thinking in terms of
like side ones?
Just any in general. Like when they think about, I want to grow, you can grow through team, you can like building the right culture, there's marketing, there's innovation. Like, what do you see most agents get wrong when it comes to like growing to the next level?
Well, speaking specifically about what top producing agents often get wrong when it comes to how they grow their companies, is that they allow themselves to be overly influenced by the opinions of people who want to sell them a particular thing that 100% of the time serves the interests of the person selling the thing, but much less often actually serves the interests of the person that's buying it. And that in today's market often takes the form of paid leads and digital advertising, because that is an incredibly transactional way to generate more business.
Yeah.
Because you're not generating more relationships, you're just generating more transactions, so more transaction opportunities. And there's a place for that in a team setting, in a company setting, absolutely. But if that, again, is the
only
principal
source.
Notion,
Yeah.
that's the primary source, you're going to live and die by
that.
So when that portal that's selling you those leads decides they want 5% more of your commission income, that turns your entire business upside down, because more often than not, that's the entirety of your margin.
Yeah.
Especially if you've got other agents as part of your team that you're splitting with, right, who are putting their time forward to go and serve those opportunities. So it's not a particular way to endure. It's maybe a quick way. It's a way to make gains in the present.
But it becomes costly in the long term.
Drives more volume, but long term, it's a mortgage. You're mortgaging your future, right? You're
renting
paying
the business versus
correct.
owning.
You're paying a great deal of interest on the principal of your business. And the thing that I encourage and that I really share with a great deal of frequency with agents and with folks that site is partnered with, is that if a great agent is a great member of the community, and they're a great community builder before they're a great real estate company builder. The most enduring real estate agents, teams, and real estate companies are in the community. They're of the community. They invest in the community. They show up for the community. They sponsor into the community. They engage with the community. They do that work, and that's bricklaying work.
Yeah.
That's
It's
not
boring.
That's
It's not
hard. It's heavy. It's uncomfortable. It's not necessarily the thing that comes.
It's not the shiny object.
Easy. It's not shiny. It's not the make it out. It's not the quick, rinse, repeat. Look at a dashboard, make a phone call, write an email, transactional type of thing. But there's so much more value, energy, beauty, magic in that approach.
Term.
My God, yes. And even long term, certainly yes. But even in the particular moments that where you show up and are present in community, and the way that you're serving community, and the way you're engaging with community, the way you're connecting with real people, forming real relationships in your community. So I try to help folks understand that business, the business of real estate in particular, but this applies to businesses of all types and sorts, is a medium by which you get to connect with people and establish and develop relationships with people that you never would have otherwise had an opportunity to get to meet and know. And if you frame things in that particular way, there's so much joy and delight to derive from that work that even though it might be heavier, even though it might be, and it is harder, it's so much more worthwhile. And if it's not worthwhile, what's the point?
And there's like a saying, it's like play long-term games with long-term people. And I feel like everything that you talk about, everything that like you say goes within that thinking. It's very long-term thinking.
Life is long, and the best way to win is to win long. So many of us are wired to. I think we all are naturally wired to win short because we're survivalists by nature, right? We're survivalists, and that in our modern world maybe shows up as consumerism. Right? It's hard to overcome that because it is innate to us. But the amazing thing about the human condition is that we have the capacity for critical thought and inspired thinking, not just influenced thinking, and we can come to those realizations, those insights, and change the way we think, and therefore change the way we act, and reorient how we approach life. In reorienting how you approach life, you necessarily are reorienting how you approach business, because life and business is not are not things that exist in balance. That's an illusion. They're things that are one and the same. They're extensions of each other. People are always asking me, you are always saying to me, you work so much. Like, when are you going to have free time and to just have fun? Like, I work so much because I enjoy the work so much.
Doing it.
I don't know how I could have more fun than this. This is just so
work is play. Good.
Yeah, it very much is. And that's not to say that it's free of frustration, because it's free of frustration or free of challenges or free of problems. But frankly, if play was free of challenges and problems, it would be boring. It wouldn't be no challenge, no adventure.
Exactly.
Right? So at that point, all you're describing is leisure. You're not describing play. You're describing leisure. Mm-hmm. And leisure is something that is awesome, like, only in its relationship to to the work you do and how you approach your work and how you approach your play. Right? If you approach those things with energy and veracity and lots of enthusiasm and with determination, devotion, and you give that lots of time, only then can you actually appreciate an hour, a day, a week of leisure. If everything's leisure, you don't know any work, and you don't know any play, and you don't even know what leisure is, because it's all you know, right? You have to have some contrast there. So that's not my particular way. It's not how I enjoy approaching these things. I just think that there's a great deal of purpose and a great deal of fulfillment, a whole lot more in pursuing long-term goals, into climbing or taking long journeys as opposed to really short ones. Those have a place for sure, but if you look at the world around us, there's a lot of analogies that you can reference to understand what I'm sharing. Mm-hmm. Sports is a great example. There's a particular basketball team that I think has this incredible ethos, this amazing culture, this philosophy that orients the decision that team has made since the beginning of the league.
What basketball team?
It's the San Antonio Spurs, which most people would never even think about because it's not a flashy,
It's not the Lakers,
big market,
Miami Heat,
headline, highlight type of team. But in the last 20 years, they've won more championships than anyone has. And it's because they've been way more successful from a win percentage perspective than any other team in the NBA. Because their philosophy is we win long, we don't win short. And if you look you look at Texas, in the very same state where San Antonio is, you'll have a team like the Dallas Mavericks, who the way that organization is oriented is to win short. And so what happens over the same 20-year period when the Spurs won 5 championships and had a 75% win percentage, the Dallas Mavericks won a single championship because they mortgaged the future to go all in to be successful once. And then after that, faced a decade of mediocrity. Right? And even to this day, right, it's been 15 or so years since their last championship. That organization feels so far removed from success to a point where they took one of the most promising, youngest generational basketball players that the league has ever seen and traded them to the Lakers for somebody they thought they could win with now. And that just speaks volumes to the tenets, the philosophies, the mantras, the guiding principles that determine organizational individual success.
So when you look at like top producing agents and you look at side and then you look at like the Spurs, for example, tactically, what do all of those like need to have in place to have that like long-term thinking, to have that like organizational success?
Discipline. Yeah, you have to know how to say no to things. Because the things you say no to are what create your yeses. It's what creates the opportunity for you to say yes to things. I recently saw some influencer, creator type person take the real estate stage at this conference in Vegas, and their principal piece of advice to agents in the audience was say yes to everything. And I just cringed so hard hearing that. And I wish I was a bit more willing to be provocative on the internet, because I would just shared that thing and added a bit of a comment, because it's not great advice. Maybe it's great advice if you're at the very beginning of your career in your life and you don't really know what your preferences are just yet. You haven't come to a place where you're confident enough to walk down a particular path. And explore. That was my experience in my early 20s and my teenage years. I said yes to everything, and it was around the time when I was like 22 or 23 where I just realized I was so overwhelmed by all the things I had committed myself to that I wasn't able to bring myself to bear fully with focus and devotion to any one thing, that everything was okay, nothing was really good. It was just broad and shallow, that I realized became enlightened to the idea that if I were to just focus on all that I had on one path, that would serve me a whole lot better, even though it meant closing myself off to other opportunities. And that was the turning point, the inflection point in my life, not just professionally, but even personally, where I finally knew what success was and how you could achieve it. And it was through that devotion, through that focus, through saying no to a whole bunch of other things so that you could say yes to the one thing and bring yourself to bear.
Yeah, it's business a lot of times more about what you say no to than what you say yes to.
Yeah, I share this insight with folks all the time. It's maybe become a bit of a a guyism, and my sense, my belief, my conviction, in fact, is that you're much more prone, you're more likely to die from indigestion than from starvation.
Yeah.
Right? Taking on too much is what will get you way more so than not having enough, because you can always go deeper, right? And deeper is where the amazing things are. If it was, nobody, you can't like brush dirt off the ground and find a diamond. You have to really, really drill down, right?
You got to dig.
You have to dig. You have to dig. You have to dig. You really have to dig. You have to go deep. That's where those amazing things exist. So instead of broad and shallow, narrow and deep. Right? Narrow and deep.
And a lot of what you're saying kind of comes across to me, because I know, like, and I've been told, in a form of like religion of Buddhism, and I was curious of like, how did that shape you as a business owner, and how did that shape how you think?
So rephrase that.
I was curious how like Buddhism kind of shaped you as a business owner and how you think about.
Well,
like,
I am no Buddhist.
But you just like practice it.
I wish maybe I were, because I'd be a lot more peaceful, a lot less restless. I'm much more a restless spirit than I am a peaceful spirit. But I
would say your journey down it has kind of probably shaped the way you thought a little bit.
Well, I derive lessons from everyone and everything. I believe everyone has something to teach. I've learned, which is to say that I've derived lessons from someone, like a teacher, like the Buddha, and I also derive, there's a really profound lesson from that drunk person outside of that bar one night that everybody was trying to not have a conversation with or stay away from. So I just orient myself to learning and to discovery, as opposed to orienting myself to belief in any one particular thing. And interestingly enough, through the process of discovery and learning is where you can derive true conviction about what you believe, because you don't hold on to those beliefs too tightly. You hold on to them as lessons that guide you and orient you, as opposed to dogmas that determine how you think and act. And so from someone like the Buddha, you can learn a lot, and you can learn a lot from. I had recently had dinner with a developer who built a new, just brought to market a new project in a town south of here called Pacifica, and he said, hunger creates clarity. I never heard that before, and that's actually such a profound insight, profound lesson, because when you're hungry, you get really clear about what your priority should be and what you need next. It simplifies everything.
Yeah.
It just reduces it down to
one thing.
The one thing, it's this very basic thing. Is that less of a lesson because nobody knows who he is? He's not some influencer with 1 million followers on Instagram, or he's not, historical in the way that the Buddha is. No, not at all. It's equal. It's equal in its measure, and it's equal in its impact.
You can learn from everyone.
Everyone has something to learn, and everyone has something to teach.
Yeah, and when you look at like brokerages now, and you look at where real estate is going, where do you think the future of brokerages are? I'm
of course partial to where what I think the future is, because I've devoted myself to that future, to creating an opportunity for that future to present itself, because the future is always unwritten. And that's the thing about the future. And we as individuals, as teams, as friends, as peers, as organizations, as movements, that's our opportunity to make an impact on the world, is to devote ourselves to a particular mission where that we have a great deal of conviction would make for a more interesting future, a more meaningful future than maybe the current reality, the present time is. And you always have to do that from a place where you recognize and have gratitude for how good things are now, because things are so amazing now, in spite of them not being perfect. Things are so amazing.
They're great.
So great. Things are so great.
It's like the best time to be alive.
It's never been better.
Never been better.
Never been better time to be alive. So easy to lose sight of that. But it's only in actually having that perspective that you're able to understand how better things could be, how much better they can still be. And that shows up in your ideals. That shows up in your mission. And nothing ever can be ideal, but advancing towards them is what makes things better than they otherwise would have been. Right?
Yeah.
So, with respect to real estate, I just don't believe I have not seen natural examples in nature, in the nature of real estate, that the future is best where you've got 1.5 million agents that subordinate themselves to 5 national real estate conglomerate brands that all look the same, feel the same, act the same, are not at all connected to the communities that they serve, are corporate, one size fits all, and are working diligently to commoditize the agents and take away what it is, strip away what's special about them, take away the nuance and standardize everything. That, to me, in the balance of my life, my experience, and everything I've learned, does not seem like a brighter like a brighter path, like a brighter, better place. But that's the trajectory the industry is currently on, and that's where all of the legacy players, the big brokerages, are investing. Right? They're investing in that type of future, and that being the future. I derive so much pleasure and satisfaction in messing with that, and just taking all the things that they are like neatly trying to, all the agents that are trying to neatly organize in these boxes, in these molds, just pulling it all apart and unbundling their neat little bundles, and encouraging folks to lean into what is distinct, unique, and one of a kind about themselves, and bring themselves to the world in that particular way. And of course, in the context of real estate and the real estate business, that's boutique, right? It's not corporate. That's specialization. It's not generalization. We have partners at Side whose brands I will never understand. I look at them and I think to myself, that's not great. It doesn't make sense to me. The promise of the brand, the look and feel of it, its aesthetics, I don't get it. But you know who does? Like the 100 people a year who enthusiastically work with them, because they're just like them. Yep. And for them, it
works.
Right on. It's I'm so happy this exists. I'm so happy this is a thing that exists there, that is out there in the world, that's real. It's not for me. It doesn't have to be. Right? That particular thing is not for me. And that's okay, because it's for someone else. And there's a real beauty in that. It's just
Yeah.
there's a real beauty in that. And the world has lost a lot of that across all industries and all communities over the last 50 to 100 years or so, with the rise of corporation, because that's what corporation does. Corporation takes capital and uses that capital to consolidate mom and pop, aka boutique, aka special, aka of the community, into one size fits all, turnkey, standardized, whatever, and they call that good business, right? And is to the benefit of the people that play games with that capital, and as opposed to it being to the benefit of the communities themselves. And it's the reason why very few corporations ever endure. Like the lifetime of a corporation in the US, it's like under 50 years. Because they'll...
And it's shrinking.
And it shrinks, it's shrinking. And what I think is really amazing about the last 20 years is the democratizing power of the internet, because the internet has made it possible for people to be themselves more and more special. Of course, the internet facilitates a lot of influence in a way that sometimes makes people conform and shrink, or makes them susceptible to their lesser instincts into being haters as opposed to lovers, for sure. But in equal proportion, if not more, it makes all of the other side of that super possible as well, in a way that it just wasn't before. And that is what I think the future is. I think the future is being together without having to be the same. In the past is the only way you get to be together is by being the same. And that is not a great way to live or to be. So for me, the future is boutique when it comes to real estate. I think communities are better served
with boutique
in that way, because that's a person who cares about that company, that brand, who is that brand, who's of the community, who has a pride of ownership, who shows up every single day, who deals in the nuances, who's not trying to make everything one size fits all, not looking to standardize every little thing. They bring as much art as they do bring science and system into what it is that they do, and that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's amazing, and that is the natural force. It's a natural force. It's a force of nature, and and forces of nature can be resisted. They can be even utilized, maybe harnessed, but eventually, like, nature is undefeated, and those forces come through, and in a way that's full-throated and uncompromising and expressive and great. And so it's a lot of fun, and it's really fulfilling to get to in my life, both individually and organizationally, at side, through our mission, our team, and the approach that we take, to be a force for what is more organic, authentic, natural, and real, like genuine, as opposed to what is imposed, overly structured, overly managed, molded, forced, and not particularly, because of that, interesting or dynamic, but rigid.
Really quickly, before we get back into the episode, did you know that email beats the ROI of social media 40-1? If you want to turn your email list into more listing appointments, then you need to check out Ella. Ella is the only email marketing agency for real estate agents. We help you build a hyper-local email newsletter. We also send conversation starter emails, and we do way more. So you can turn your email into a profitable marketing channel this year. Click the link below. Check it out. hope to see you in there. Let's get back to the episode.
When I think of like creating that support, like that back office for the agent and making it easier, like people is one way of doing it. And we kind of talked about like people and tech, and AI is at the center of the conversation of nearly everything right now. And I was just curious on your take of where you think AI sits and where an organization should look to build for that in terms of like building an experience for agents.
Technology, tools, those are the extensions of humankind. They do not exist independent of intentionality, and that applies to everything, including AI. Real estate in particular is super highly susceptible to hype cycles. Just a few years ago, all of these industry pundits were going up on every stage they possibly could, talking about how iBuying was going to replace all the agents, and whatever happened to that? Nobody talks about it anymore. It's as if that never happened. But it sold a lot of newspaper subscriptions, like online publication subscriptions. A lot of people went to conferences to listen to that stuff and be really scared about it. And you had the whole crypto thing, blockchain thing, NFT thing, skies falling, whatever. You had last year, of course, the whole lawsuit thing, or commissions are going away, agents are going away, this is going away. All of those things are sort of transient and illusionary, and they do present kernels of truth, and that's why they resonate with people and why they're able to be utilized and put out there in such a way that can compel people's imaginations in the wrong way, into worry as opposed to into inspiration.
Yeah.
And from all those things, there will be and there is compost that new things will come out from and grow from that wouldn't have otherwise happened if
without it.
Without those things. But I generally advise folks, guide them in a way where I say, focus on the fundamentals, on those natural forces, right? On those tangible things that you can impact and affect every single day in a meaningful and tangible and real way, in a direct way. And do your best not to apply your energy, your thinking to things that are outside of your control. It's like the Lion King thing where Mufasa takes Simba and he's like, everything the sun touches will one day be yours. And that stuff in the darkness, don't think about that. That's the advice, right? Like focus on everything that's in your sun, that's within your world of control. So with respect to AI, to artificial intelligence, that's going to, of course, like every other technology, every other innovation, make an impact, just like crypto has and will make an impact.
Yep.
The question then becomes to what extent and how and what and where and all of those things. What is, I think, incredibly interesting with respect to AI is that the first thing it replaces are its own creators, right? The coders, the programmers, the folks that are doing the heavy lift on code, as opposed to the designers and architects and thinkers that imagine what the code can do and what it can become, right? There's nothing that can replace human ingenuity, because AI itself, all it does is predicts from human ingenuity, human imagination, the past, right? It predicts from the past into the future. It connects those disparate things to draw insight and analysis. And that can present brand new thoughts and brand new concepts that weren't there before, but they're still of, humankind's making. in places like real estate, like law, like the trades, electricians, plumbers, dentists, anything where you're being licensed by a particular governing body, right? Like in the case of real estate, departments of real estate. You have nothing to worry about when it comes to AI replacing the work that you do or what it is that you represent or the role that you play in a transaction. Mm-hmm. It will certainly augment you in
help.
Meaningful ways so that the things that you really should not be doing, you don't have to do as much of, or the things that you want to do more of, you can maybe do better, faster, with more support.
Yep.
And with more augmentation is the key, right?
Yep.
Like I believe in a future that is cyborg, not robot. Right? It's
a mix.
It's human and technology in the same loop together, enhancing. The technology enhances the humanity. It's not the humanity is getting replaced by the technology. And in real estate in particular, that is going to be very much the case because there will never be a real estate department that licenses an artificial intelligence. At the end of the day, they have to be able to hold accountable an individual for the work that they're doing to make sure that the people they're serving are being served responsibly and in a way that is consistent with what it is that we all expect and require in those experiences.
Yep.
And when it comes to those experiences. So if you're an agent that has had a whole lot of people, a whole lot of publications, a whole lot of coaches, real estate influencers that have never knocked on a door or done a real estate transaction telling you how scared or worried you should be about AI, I think quite the opposite. Embrace that more so as something that will augment what you're already doing, but will not replace it. All those
Yep.
foundational things, the showing up in the community, the establishing of relationships, the deepening and developing of those relationships, AIs will never be able to do that, ever.
The internet didn't replace shopping or replace taxis. It just made it easier.
Exactly right. It augmented.
Yep.
Travel is maybe the best example of this because there's no industry was impacted more by technology than travel because pre-internet, if you wanted to fly from Florida, right where you live,
Yep.
to here,
To
California, where I get to live, you had to walk into or a retail center or call agent and actually get on, be on the phone with them for 20 minutes, figuring out what flights were available, when and where, and what the cost would be, and then they would sit there and coordinate all of that for you. But because that is a higher frequency experience, the experience of short range domestic travel, and a lower cost experience, because it's not hundreds of thousands of dollars, it's hundreds of dollars.
Yep.
That's something that technology was able to address, that the frequency of that in a way that created efficiency and made things even more cost effective and allowed people to be more in control of what it is that they want to be in control of. Great. But in the 20 plus years that you've had something like an Expedia, nobody's ever gone there and spent $25,000 on a safari to Africa. And they never will, because you don't do that all the time. It's a very infrequent event.
Yep.
And it's very expensive, it's very costly, and it's very high risk, because if you make the wrong decisions, you might just get eaten by a lion. You don't know what you're getting yourself into. So that's where today you still call a travel agent. And that's a travel agent who's excellent and experienced and credible and knows what they're doing and can instill confidence in you. And when you land there and there's a problem, you can call them and they can support you and help you. And that's much more akin to the role of a real estate agent than anything else is.
Yeah.
And those things are entrenched and enduring and will only be augmented, never replaced.
So it's safe to say it's going to do away with probably the very bottom of the agents, and the top are going to be, not, I shouldn't say do away. That's
No, that's
wrong
why.
word,
Why
but-
say? So, yeah, talk your shit.
Not talking about shit. But
Yeah, look,
it's going to make it harder to, like, I should say we'll probably just like cut that because
that's okay. Just go with it. I mean, you're onto something there. But it's fair to say that there are too many agents in the real estate industry today. There are roughly the historic 30-year average for annual closings when it comes to real estate is about 5.5 million in closings a year. Then you have 1.5 million licensed realtors. So, if you average that out, that's 3 deals per person. Do you really need that many agents?
no.
To serve that many families, buyers, sellers, renters, that many transactions? You don't. But the reason there are so many is because it's to the benefit of large traditional brokerages, because an agent that does 1 deal a year is paying 50% on their split, not 10% on their split. It's to the benefit of the associations, because it's better to get $500 from 1.5 million people than it is from 150,000 people. Show me the incentive, and I'll show you what people are, what people's actual behaviors are, and why they do why they do. You can just look at the incentive structures. Incentive structures are the most powerful thing in the world. They're what motivates behavior more than anything else does. So it's true and it's fair to say that the industry is set up for quantity, not quality, and there are way more licensed agents in industry than there needs to be. This year, last year, year before that, there were 4 million closings in the national market in the USA. You would have to go back to 1995 to find a market with 4 million closings the way we've had in the last 3 years in this market now. So there's been a meaningful contraction when it comes to closings. The difference between the market of 1995 and the market of 2025 is that now there's 1 million more agents licensed than there was back then. So clearly you did not need 1 million more agents to facilitate the market back then, and you don't necessarily need them now. There's a lot more people trying to eat off of that, a much smaller pie.
Yep.
And okay, all right, that actually has created an environment where top producers are able to rise.
Yep.
Top producing teams, an environment where team name, brand, boutique, specialization matters so much more than it ever did, because you have to differentiate yourself and be a signal amongst all of that noise if you actually want to be able to compete and to succeed.
The cream rises to the top. And if people want like more, you just started a social media account. Where should they go follow you?
Not on my social media accounts. Yeah, those are particularly uninteresting. But if you just type in, guy, gal into Google, you can't miss me. You'll find me in all the places. It's a pretty funny name. And of course, the company is Side. That's my labor of love, my life's work, and that's easy to find as well. But a pleasure to connect with you, and I'm glad we were connected by a mutual friend of ours who's a great agent.
And I appreciate it. What is like one thing that you are so convicted on, that everything that you've learned around leadership and building an organization that lasts long term, what does a world-class leader mean to you?
I find that the best leaders are really great followers first. And when you are a good leader, you're able to both lead and follow in equal parts, depending on what the circumstance calls for.
And I think it's easy to say that Side would not have grown to what it is today if it didn't help grow thousands others and you leading by example of growing together.
I did not even connect the dots on that, but you're so absolutely right that Side would not be what it is today if was not able to follow in the footsteps of the incredible agents that we get to serve. And the agents that we get to serve maybe would not be in the great place that they're today in ownership, the way that they are, if Side didn't lead and they didn't decide to follow in that particular way. So it is a relationship, and that's why we say, we do partnerships.
Partnerships.
We do partnerships. Yeah, it's all about partnership.